right. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad that you're here live with us. I'm Elizabeth Hayes, and I'm on our marketing team here at Backstory. Quick housekeeping, drop your questions in the chat throughout. We'll have live Q&A at the end, and we'll actually use whatever you drop in there. And as you might have seen in the registration, but it's a practitioner first, no fluff, no product demo. We brought together two fabulous people who have genuinely sat in these seats. So as a lot of you already know, Sam McKenna is the founder of Sam Sales. She's trained thousands of sellers, and just as importantly, she talks to buyers constantly. So she knows what lands and what doesn't. Chris Etterman is our VP of customer revenue at Backstory, and he spent over a decade in B2B SaaS sales, from being an AE at Salesforce and Blend to now running the customer side of our business. So let's go ahead and just jump right in because we've only got 30 minutes. Sam, I wanted to go ahead and start with you. Sorry, I just really get rapid fired. So
let's do it. I'm here for the rapid fire.
Okay. So you're talking to buyers all the time. What are they actually telling you about the reps that they hear from right now?
I think that the biggest challenge right now is figuring out how to build more pipeline in this modern age and how to think about how to use AI to do that. So I think everybody is like, how do we scale? How do we scale? How do we scale? And I think part of that is we're throwing tons and tons of AI at them, but we're also thinking, how do we get back to foundations in terms of how do we prospect? How do we find the right buyers? How do we use referrals? How do we cut through the noise of executives' inbox? How do we think about that in this day and age? Chris, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I think, so pipeline cures all, as any sales leader knows. But yeah, I think it's a confusing time for sellers because there is this proliferation of different tools that they have access to. And it's like, how do we really harness those and leverage those for a better buying experience for the customer?
Completely.
Totally. And I was going to say, I think everyone probably resonates with those problems. So let's switch to what we can do about it. It's the fix. So I feel like, Sam, you've landed on a pretty clean split here. AI owns the memory work, the rep owns the relationship work. Can you kind of walk us through what you mean by that?
Yeah. So think about this, right? We have access to all this fantastic AI now. And I think it's actually an advantage. If you followed our organization or me for some time, you know that we live and breathe Show Me You Know Me, which is in the screen behind here. So I think the answers, right, to how we succeed today are how we stand out in a different way from our competition, how we do the things that others aren't willing to do. And AI is giving you an amazing opportunity to do your educational part at scale. So what does an organization do, right? What are their challenges? What are they going through? What can we understand about their executives? You can use AI to do all of that. In fact, I was just looking at something the other day. The CRO of DocuSign, who's got DocuSign on in their territory. CRO of DocuSign just posted an article about what they're going through in terms of go-to-market motions, all kinds of stuff. All you have to do, right, is say, hey, did the CRO of DocuSign or whatever your territory is post an article recently, write something? Did they get mentioned in the press? And all of a sudden you can figure out what's top of mind, what they're talking about. A lot of these articles will tell you exactly how to sell to them on top of that. And then we use that and we mix it in with our own brain and personality and isms, and we throw that in a subject line that makes no sense to anybody else when we do an outbound campaign. Or you lead with that in a connection request on LinkedIn and you show you've done your research. You stand out as a different rep. Maybe you even send the connection request late at night or early on a weekend morning because you know they're probably working and no one else is competing for their time work-wise at that very moment.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think everybody can resonate with that. But I think, Chris, where does that line kind of get blurry? Because I think a lot of reps and a lot of salespeople hear that, but think, okay, I still have to verify everything anyway. And that line just gets blurred.
Yeah. So most reps aren't bad at selling. What is challenging for a rep, though, is the admin work pre and post call. And inevitably, then you show up burnt out and you're unprepared. And then it's painfully evident for the customer when that happens. And so again, the real cost is when you're trying to do that, call it memory work, you're skimming CRM, you're skimming through notes, you're looking through an email thread. What did the buyer say last time we met with them? Oh, what did they say on that call, 6 months ago? So the human brain's amazingly powerful, but it's not really great at remembering that level of granularity and detail over the course of multiple touch points of some of these enterprise cycles could be 6 to 12 months long, right? So the fix isn't really working harder. It's deciding and delineating what work belongs to AI and what work should the human do.
This is such a great point. So like think about this of like how you can show your buyers you know them by asking questions like that and aggregating that data from the previous calls. If I show up to a call with Chris and I say, "Hey, can you remind me for the umpteenth time, what's in your tech stack? What are you guys doing? How many reps do you have? What are your top accounts?" And he's like, I already told you that. Like, are you paying attention? Right? And maybe I was, but if I'm back to back to back as a rep every single day, my wires are going to cross, and I have to think about how do I at scale remember the things that are going on in Chris's life so that I can quickly look at my notes and be like, I know you mentioned last time XYZ. And he's like, yeah, you're the only rep that's remembering what we talked about. So that's great. And I'm not. There's only so much room in my brain. I'm just using AI to make me look more prepared than I am.
Right. And if I can add, like, a classic example, like number one pet peeve, as someone who's now on this side of the table, as like at the table buying technology, is when someone shows up and says, "Hey, like, can you tell me what your top 3 business priorities are?"
Yeah.
That is a classic example. Like, there's so much information out there, right, that AI can help glean from and pull from, that you should at least come in, even if you don't really know, come in with a point of view, and that's where AI can help you prep and be more effective walking into some of these calls.
I have a thread to pull, and I want to ask you a question, and hopefully you say yes. Otherwise, I'm going to look really bad. So just say yes anyway, and we can argue later. But here's the thing that we talk about on discovery calls, right? One of the things, the things that we see on discovery call that most often happens is the rep, let's say the seller is me. I get on with you, Chris, and I say, tell me a little bit about what interested you in taking this call. A, I sound like everybody else. And 2, you're like, I'm also asking a super narrow question. And maybe you decide to kind of be a jerk that day. And you're like, I don't know. Your rep reached out, booked time with me. So here I am. I can't quite remember. And then I get nervous and I talk about myself and it's terrible. Or I can do something that's a little bit of a thread of what you said. The ask me what the 3 priorities are is not a great way to start the conversation. We also don't want to assume that we know what the priorities are and then start to talk about ourselves again for 28 minutes. But what I think is interesting is if we show up to a discovery call with you, Chris, we've used AI to pull our information. We already know what's happening with the account if it's an existing account. And now we finally get the call to you. And we say something like, we tell you a million things about us, 1, 2, 3, but I'd love to hear from you first. I know this, and I know that people in your role are focusing on these priorities right now, but tell me about you. Tell me about your team, challenges and issues you have for the year ahead. I'd love to start there. Because my theory, kind of when we coach on that, is to say that we've got the opportunity to show we've done our homework, we're prepared with a point of view, we already know what's going on with you, but can I just give you the mic for a second? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I love that. And I love, like, the nuance of, like, here's what we hear from your peers, right? Because again, it gives you credibility, whether you're selling, it doesn't really matter, like whether you're selling to sales leaders, cybersecurity leaders, marketing leaders, like you want to, I think, as a seller, bring credibility to the call, A, that you've done your homework, B, that you know the space, C, that you've had this conversation and that you can bring a perspective. But then to Sam's point, allow them to give their point of view, right? So don't assume, but use the knowledge that you've gathered to set the stage and build that credibility right out of the gate.
Heck yeah.
Love it. I guess I'm like also curious to kind of flip it. What's the most common mistake you see when people are kind of trying to split this? I know like there's the kind of the AI spray and pray kind of emails, all of that. But I guess, is there one mistake you've seen over and over that you can help people avoid?
Chris, you want to go or you want me to chit chat?
Yeah, I have one, and this is like personal. This is like a pet peeve. So maybe
Let's hear it. We're here. It's airing of the grievances. Go ahead.
Yeah, it could be a me issue. It's like, I think everybody wants, when it comes to prospecting, right? Like personalization is key, right? But it's personalization combined with added value in that message. It's not like, hey, I saw we went to the same college. Like, I don't care. No offense to you, him or her. I don't care. But it can be, hey, I saw you at the same college. We help sales leaders like you solve XYZ problems. Or I read this quote from your CRO, right? So it's that combination. And I think, again, AI can come in and help combine that like human relationship element of, hey, again, like saw we at the same college or we were in the same sorority, what have you, combined again with something relevant to my business that I care about. But I don't know, Sam, anything from your
Totally.
side?
And I think like I frankly love all the volume that AI is turning up on what we call scaled and veiled approach, because it makes show me you know me even easier to stand out. So in my selfish opinion, keep doing it so that it's even easier for us to stand out and win. But I think that that's exactly what Chris said, right? And I think this also goes to our leadership, our enablement teams to think about. We don't want to keep punching the gas on just terrible quantity. And that's what we're doing with AI is we're making it scaled and veiled. We're scaling it and we're veiling the fact that we made an effort when we didn't. And when we reach out and we say something that's inauthentic, or we say, oh my gosh, I also went to FSU. Did you jump in the fountain? That's so cool. Do you want to buy my stuff? Not really. Thanks for that riveting note about you also getting in the fountain at FSU. What about it? Make an authentic connection, right? And I think that that's where you're going to find success when you use AI. I mentioned the CRO at DocuSign, by the way. DocuSign's not a client. I know nothing about her. I just saw her cited in this article yesterday. But when you think about something like that, go right to the top. I'm probably not going to email the SVP. I'm not going to email somebody in enablement. I'm going to email the CRO or the CEO or the CTO. I'm going to make an effort. I'm going to send 50 emails to the top buyer persona that at some point is involved in my sales cycle. Because here's what's what. The higher up they are in the ranks, the longer they've been in that role and the longer they've seen really terrible sales outreach. And I know that their inbox is filled with terribleness. The higher I go, the worse their inbox is. So I'm probably going to get a great shot at getting an open if I make the effort with someone like that and really try. And the beautiful part is that they're going to be like, in theory, not a silver bullet, but in theory, they're going to say, oh my God, finally, somebody who makes an effort. They're going to reply, even if it's not something that they need, or they're going to reply and say, great email, not my territory. You're going to want to talk to Chris. And with one level of effort, I've now gotten a reply from a really important title and I've multi-threaded one swoop, right? Like this is how we really think about working smarter and harder at the same time.
Yeah, I love that example because the hard part historically was doing the research to write the email, right? Like that was always the daunting part. Oh, I need to reach out, in your case, in this hypothetical example, to the CRO DocuSign. I need to go read an earnings call. I need to go to I need to go to like their investor website, look at their most recent presentation. Like it was like a burdensome lift that I had to go do.
Yeah.
Now the beauty, again, leveraging AI in this case, right? I can go have AI help me craft that note and then tweak it to take not only to the CRO, but to the other buyers you may be pursuing. But the AI has done like the grunt work of aggregating all these different components and making it super succinct and crisp, which I love our friend Claude for, right?
Yeah.
Help me make this warmer, help me make this more concise.
Yeah.
And then I can go take that again to a bunch of different people within an organization.
Totally. And I feel like we've been talking a lot about like the AE or the rep role. I'm curious, Chris, if you have thoughts on kind of in a manager or revenue leader role, what kinds of problems they're feeling and what AI can own for them as well. And Sam, too, what you've seen work in that regard as well.
Yeah. Chris, I'll let you kick that off too, especially in your leadership role.
Yeah, I think one thing is like, it's interesting stepping into this leadership role, right? As a rep, you feel for the most part that you know all of your accounts and deals intimately.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be the case, but at least you feel that way. As a sales leader, all of a sudden you're spread super thin, right?
Yeah.
Your calendar is no longer yours. Your days are wild and crazy, and you're thrown into these fires or these calls. And you'd often, and as much as you'd love to tell yourself, I'm going to have like 15 minutes to prep before each call, it's just not the reality of the situation. So again, I would say like the problem is like all of a sudden I'm trying to, in a pre-AI world, I'm like scrambling. I'm unprepared for my rep, which is really the worst feeling, right? Is when they're pulling me into a call and I don't have I'm not showing up as my best self, let's call it, right? And so now, like what I want AI to help me do is start to look at what are these engagement patterns look like across all of my reps and all of my deals? Which ones are healthiest? Where do I need to allocate my time? Like if we have a methodology, are they using it? Right? Which in turn helps me come in and feel more prepared when I walk into a call. If we know that we have either specific engagement gaps or specific gaps related to like a methodology. And so it's like, I can use this data now without feeling like I have to micromanage my rep to help me prep for some of these calls.
Yeah. I think that's it too. And I think like especially as sales leaders, we've every single member of our team needs us in some fashion. And some of them need us from a strategy perspective. Others need us for more foundational work, et cetera. We wish we could be, we had 10 times the amount of hours in the day that we have. But I think the beautiful part about AI is like prompting and asking questions, being able to dig into our database and saying, what are the objections that are coming up? Where do you find, like, where are there the largest pauses, after a buyer asks a question and this particular rep doesn't know how to answer? What are the things that I can really solve for, right, that are going to make the most impact? Looking across our deals, what's at risk, what's not multi-threaded, right? Having AI kind of be that extra sort of executive sponsor leader to us so that we know that we're spending our time in the right places. I think the other thing that I would say, like, problem with AI is I think we are relying on it too much to do that quantity legwork. And what I would encourage a leader to do is try to be that different angle, right? Use AI to prospect in a different way. Find your lower hanging fruit by using great platforms like Sales Nav. Try and thinking about how you can write those creative subject lines. Teach them how to think, how to use AI, and then how to think instead of just rely on AI and let AI do all the thinking.
When I heard, like, I was on, again, LinkedIn, as a lot of people do as they scroll throughout their day. There was a CRO at a company that I admire, and he had this great mantra, which was like, assume your product is commoditized. How else can you win? Right? And, he was like, a better understanding of their business, deeper relationships, better service. And to me, it was like this, like, it's kind of obvious when you say it out loud, but it was this aha moment of, like, there's a component of selling which AI can never replace, right? And that's like kind of in those three buckets, like the better understanding of the deeper service, the relationships. But like when it comes to like the understanding of their business, like that's where we can really use AI to accelerate that more qualitative bucket. And so I found it really interesting, and it's a mantra again that I preach to my team is like, let's continue to think about how do we continue to win other ways and not just always rely on product, right? Even though the product that we sell is amazing, there's going to be times where we have to go differentiate. Like we are ultimately, like we're the differentiator. We are the differentiators as sellers, right? We make the biggest impact.
I think this is just one other thing, and then Elizabeth, I promise I'll be quiet. But I think that's it. Like in terms of using AI. So when we think about our product and our differentiator, and I think this actually relates to a really great question in the Q&A from Manuela, where like, how do we prompt AI to get the best show me, you know me? And I think sometimes it comes down to what are our differentiators from a product perspective. So if you go right and you pop in AI and you say, this is what I sell, and I'm selling to Chris, right, at Backstory. How do I think about this from the perspective of why would he care about me? Like, this is what I would say our benefit is and our value is. So what to someone like Chris, right? And AI can start to dig in and say, this is what they're going through as a company. This is his title. This is what you can assume from what we can find in terms of hiring, growth, change of brand, all kinds of things, right? And now I start to figure out, right? It kind of helps me critically think. And I can either do that on my own, right? Or pull what I got from AI and hopefully write a really compelling, you should meet with me, time with me will be well spent email when I reach out to him.
Totally. And I was going to say too, I think I would love, now that you also both sit on the other side. So from like that buyer's perspective, are there any like cues that tell you, oh, this team nailed it? Or like they know, or I really respect what they did. I think kind of not that you necessarily know right off the bat, that's what's AI or what's, them. But I guess like in your recent experiences sitting on the buyer side, have you noticed anything that you can share with our audience?
It's been a while since I've seen a rep nail it on the buyer side. Am I allowed to say that? The calls are pretty tough. Chris?
No offense taken on behalf of all the reps out there.
Yeah, it's been a minute for me, but I think it's like it really is that prep and that research, like knowing that they've done even baseline level of research on me. I think I shared this a while back, but like one of my favorite questions that I get from reps is when they ask me what prompted me to join Sam Sales. And I was like, well, I started the company, so I'm not quite sure how to answer that. It's just like, come on, man, do better. Chris, what about you?
Well, it kind of goes back to my like assume the product is commoditized.
Yeah.
Like I just more often than not, it feels like again like on the buyer side, like the technology is interchangeable for the most part.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like yes, there are certain things that could be a must have, and there are certain features that are like, oh wow, that's really great, but like in the grand scheme of things, I'm a believer that like more often than not, again, like the technology is interchangeable. And so what's really apparent when you go into these meetings, and again, I think what a seller often forgets is like the buyer has a million things going on in their life,
Yeah.
like work and personal. And so when they show up to your call that you've been diligently prepping for, and it's your whole day focused on this big call, that could be one of 10 calls this buyer has that day, and they're woefully unprepared to talk to you. And so
True.
like the seller's ability to like ground the conversation quickly, add value out of the gate, build a bit of rapport and show me that you've done your homework and you know the problem that I'm trying to solve. Like I would say the first like 2 or 3
Yeah.
minutes. If it's not very good, I kind of tune out the rest of the call. And if it's great, I'm like, ooh, tell me
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're looking for you to lean in if we're pitching to you, Chris. We're looking
Yeah,
for
if I'm way back like this, I put my sunglasses on whenever you're in trouble.
Zoning
Um,
out. Yeah.
but yeah, again, I just go back to like I'm such a believer in like your sellers have to be the differentiator.
yeah.
And
I
that's
was
like that comes down from enablement, from leadership, all of you like, again, like assume the product is commoditized, technology is interchangeable. How else can you win?
exactly. And think about this. If the call is worth your time, it's worth the prep. And we're all really, really busy, right? But just like carve out time to do your prep in advance of your day of call or your week of calls. So go and do like an hour, right, of just like show me, you know me prep. Take your notes, have your bullets down. The most beautiful part about being on camera, by the way, is that you can have your notes all here. You have a crib sheet, like you're literally cheating on the exam and the teacher's not there to watch you. Not that I ever did that, just to be clear. But you've got that. So you can go from one call to the next. I'll show up from my last call for talking about semiconductors to my call with Chris. And I'm like, crap, who is this again? And then here are my notes, my bullets. And I do my rapport building on the things that I talked to Chris about, not where we went to school, because it was not the same. And that's not going to be exciting anyway. But I've got my notes there. And then I can tell you a million things about Sam sales and go into my opening script based on the bullets I have. That gives me the chance to be like, okay, now let him talk for a minute and figure out what the hell I'm going to sell him on this call in the day of back to backs.
I was gonna say this segues really nicely into some of the questions / chatter that's been going on in the chat. But I think like I would love to hear too. Like, do you have? I know from Manuela, like what prompts do you use to build an amazing Show Me You Know Me? Do either of you have a good prompt go to in any of these LLMs that help you get to these bullets quicker and prep quicker?
I keep track of through a bunch of different applications that keep track of where executives are talking. So like even just some of the most premier blogs and articles and things like that, from Morning Brew to Revenue Brew to LinkedIn's How I Sell, all of those things where I'm looking for those people. And then I'll take in just a couple of their articles or podcasts and I'll say, this is what I sell. This is our core value proposition. Here are 3 places where they were recently cited. Pull something as it relates back to my organization or my style, right? You don't have to be a Sam McKenna to be able to do this. Your company stands for something too and is widely known. And then say, how can I connect on a few of the bullet points they talked about? The one thing I will say also is I like to write back, are you sure? when I get my answers, because a lot of the times they're nonsense and they're wrong. And then the LM will come back and be like, great call out. Some of this is completely garbage. And I'm like, thank you very much for falling on your sword. There's a good joke that we're giving LLMs anxiety, by the way, these days by challenging them. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, internally here at Baxter, we're fortunate enough to have like a repository of Claude, like a Claude library, we call it. And so it's very similar, right? And it's I think a combination of like, hey, I need you to go aggregate a bunch of different data sources. For me, the biggest one, it's going to be again like podcast interviews. When you can pull transcripts, right? Either like even from Spotify or from Apple Podcasts, and then combining that again, I think like earnings calls, particularly the Q&A. Like if you can leverage your Show Me You Know Me and with data from those 2 things, that becomes super powerful.
I think you guys, anybody of you that has Chris on your list to prospect to, which first, if you do, kudos for showing up. But B, like you can write your subject line, hoping to get you to lean in on our call together. Bam. He can't not respond to that. Sorry,
Oh,
Chris.
I would take a meeting in a heartbeat.
Did you? You're welcome, everybody.
There you go.
My pleasure. I'll see myself out.
Okay, we have one more pretty good discussion topic, and I know we only have a couple minutes left, so we can keep it brief, but from Katie. And she says she works specifically with nonprofits, but a lot of times she's getting on calls and they want her to give them all the information up front and then go figure stuff out on the back end. So she was just, I think, looking for a little bit of insight into, I guess, if other people are having this same experience, and why people might be using AI instead of wanting to actually talk to salespeople.
I have a ripcord on this, but Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can keep it quick though. I actually think this shift started pre-LLM and pre-AI, right? Like buyers over the past, I don't know, call it decade, started to do way more research before they ever talked to a rep. And so I think that's where it all kind of passed over to Sam. Like that's why nailing this show me, you know me with, again, a combination of AI and the human element, like you may have one shot to make that great impression. Because again, they've done 80% of their homework. They're coming to you for the last 20%. And if you show up, again, unprepared, etc., you don't have multiple shots because they're already further down the buying path than they were historically. But Sam, anything else?
And nailed it. And I think it's also because we show up not prepared to have a conversation. And so we're not leading the call or we don't show our expertise up front. So what I would say is like, again, think about those discovery calls. When you use that opening script that I talked about, it's a completely different kind of call than they're used to. And when you show that you've done your research, you have a point of view, you have something to teach them, you start to get them talking. The idea, right, is not for us to demo or show our decks or anything like that on that first call. And in fact, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make is that we try to disco and demo in a 30-minute block, and then they got pretty much what they needed from us, so they don't show up again. Our whole point of that first call is to understand them and to get them talking. So change that opening script. Even if you're only 18 minutes on a discovery call and you're like, well, I guess I could demo for 12, or don't demo for 12. Wrap it up and say, there's a bunch of places where we can help you, right? Why don't we do this as a next step? Grab another call. Let me walk you through some of the options that we have specifically based on the challenges you set, and let's go from there. I think if you just change that first call to be a conversation to show that you're a consultant, that you have a point of view, you have a brain, all those things, they're more willing to talk and they're more willing to trust you because you're coming at that call in a different way than everybody else.
Okay, now I was like, this is a perfect note to end on, mic drop. But I was going to say, I think like my last question to you both was going to be like, what's one thing revenue leaders or reps can do this week? But I feel like that's all we talked about. So hopefully everybody is walking away with really tactical things that you can take back to either your day-to-day job or your teams, and share. And I know we're already at time that flew right on by. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Chris, for such a great conversation. Everybody, thank you for joining. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
Have a great
Happy Friday, guys. Bye.
Bye.